Now, this is a tricky one. This was a big brain situation. I really had to think my way through this fancast in particular, because as much as most of my fancasts are pretty straightforward, here is who I would cast as these characters, this one, we're talking about it in MCU terms. And I'll save a lot of my theories about who and why and where and how the Young Avengers could be formed, who will be in it, for another video, for a theory video probably. The fact is that, in terms of the MCU, half, at least, of the characters they could or are likely to use in a Young Avengers team have already been cast. So, this is half fan cast, half just stating characters that not necessarily going to be used, but that could be, that are already there, already cast in the MCU. Even if a lot of them actually haven't appeared on screen yet, they have been cast for going forwards. And that makes it seem more likely that they are going to be in a Young Avengers team at some point. So here is a quick listing of those characters before we get to the actual other ones that haven't been cast that I'm going to fan cast. So firstly, Hawkeye. Not that one. Kate Bishop, Hawkeye, yeah. She is a younger Hawkeye from the comics who was one of the OG members from the very first issue of Young Avengers. And she's been cast in the MCU in Haley Steinfeld. She's going to appear in the Hawkeye TV show alongside Jeremy Renner. There's every chance that he hangs up his bow and arrow and goes off to live with his family and leaves the MCU like a lot of the other original Avengers have, and she takes over. And she would be a prime person to even start up the Young Avengers team in the MCU, potentially. Next, also already cast and upcoming, and we should have seen her already, but we haven't, is Black Widow. Yelena Belova, Black Widow, yeah. Florence Pugh has already been cast for the Black Widow film. She is playing Natasha's younger sister kind of thing. She was also in the Black Widow program, and she isn't necessarily all a good guy, but that runs the same for most people that carry the mantle of Black Widow, and it seems like she's going to be appearing at some point in the Hawkeye TV show, so we could be seeing Young Avengers coming together on screen faster than we thought. We could see a meeting between Kate Bishop and her, and suddenly they form a friendship like Hawkeye and Black Widow had all along in the MCU, and that starts the blossoming of them starting up this younger version of the team. Next, Miss America. We haven't seen her on screen either, but she has been cast. Miss America, or America Chavez, will be played by, I'm going to butcher this, Xochitl Gomez. I don't even know how to pronounce. No, I don't have a hope I'm butchering it. She's been cast for that role in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and while we have to wait another year before we actually see what goes on with that, there are two options: that she might just be a multiverse character one-off, or that she's somehow going to be introduced in that film, and then it's going to be used going forwards. And she's another character who, it's unlikely she's going to get her own franchise of any kind. She could get a Disney Plus show, and everyone can get their own Disney Plus show if they want it. But she is also a very big option for sure, and a member in the comics of the Young Avengers that we could see in that form. Next, Stature is another one. She's already been cast as well. 3 times, actually. That's right, 3 times. Not many characters in the MCU have been cast 3 times already. But Cassie Lang, we already saw as... she's Ant-Man's daughter. She's Ant-Man's daughter. She was in Ant-Man and Ant-Man 2, played by the same actress, I think. She's not been cast 4 times, right? And then she was recast because she'd aged up 5 years all of a sudden for Endgame. And then, coming into Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, which is coming out next year, she's been cast again anew as Katherine Newton, who is a big upcoming star. Now, you're not just casting her for that one-off film. I very much doubt it. I think they're casting her to be the kind of Ant-Man-y character going forwards, aka Stature, as she is in the comics. And that's another character who I can't imagine seeing her get a film franchise of her own after the Ant-Man trilogy is finished. Could move to Disney Plus. Could be in the Young Avengers quite easily because she was in the comics next. Patriot is a character that you might not recognize the name of, but you've already seen him. He's already been in the MCU just in the last few weeks in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now, I haven't seen the last episode yet. It's not been released as of recording this. But Elijah and his story as the older Captain America, well, not Captain America, but the super soldier. His grandson is Eli Bradley, and in the comics, he had to get a blood transfusion from his grandfather. Well, first of all, he was pretending he'd got a blood transfusion from his grandfather. He was actually just taking drugs. But eventually, he got a blood transfusion from his grandfather, giving him his powers, giving him super soldier abilities. And he became Patriot. Captain America character. We've already got Black Widow and Hawkeye, and now Captain America character. Nailed it. And he's already been introduced in Falcon Winter Soldier, played by Elijah Richardson. So he is well on his way to also being some sort of character around. It would be really weird to introduce him and not then lead him into being another superheroic character of some kind. Next. It's also worth noting, and I doubt this is going to be a Young Avengers team member, but Joaquin Torres was also introduced in the Falcon and Winter Soldier, and Sam gave him his wings, his Falcon wings. And in the comics, yes, Joaquin Torres is Falcon later. And then he kind of didn't just use the wings. He had kind of other birdie powers, actually, in the comics. But I think we're okay with just the wings, yeah. And he's being played by Danny Ramirez, and he's like 28. It's not really as young as most of these other ones. But it's not impossible that he could turn up in a Young Avengers team. It's not impossible. It's more likely that he is the Falcon going forwards, but it is seen in other things with, like, Sam and Bucky. But who knows? Next. Also, and this is just worth noting, because in the Young Avengers, they had Marvel Boy. Yeah. It's possible that they don't introduce him and instead use Miss Marvel, who's also been cast for her own, Kamala Khan, for her own Disney Plus show upcoming. She is being played by Iman Vellani, and that's a really actual teenage superhero role like Spider-Man. But it's a major one. It's major enough that they don't need for her to be a successful character to put her in a Young Avengers team. But they might anyway, or might guest star, or whatever. You'll note that I'm not putting Tom Holland's Spider-Man in this. There's very little chance he would join a Young Avengers team. Miles Morales, possibly. But if you want to see how I'd cast the same, check out my Into the Spider-Verse fan cast now. Next, finally, of the ones already established in the MCU, we've got to talk about Ironheart. Yeah, we've already got here a younger version of Hawkeye, Miss America and Patriot. Either of them is a kind of Captain America-y character in a way. Younger version of Ant-Man, younger version of Captain Marvel, younger version of Black Widow. It just makes sense that they would also potentially on this team want Riri Williams, aka Ironheart, who's also getting her own Disney Plus show, being played by Dominique Thorne. There's every chance they introduce her into it as well, though again, she's getting her own Disney Plus show as this new character. There's every chance they just want to keep going with that for multiple seasons instead of introducing her in, or adding her into a team like this later. But it depends on how successful both of those shows are, Miss Marvel and Ironheart. Next, now we get to move on to characters that we get to fan cast for the team. There are a few others there that are obvious options for a Young Avengers team, if it's anything like it is in the comics. Now, you could, from what we've already said there, you could easily make, that's a team. It is a mostly female team, but it is a team, and there's nothing to say it couldn't be all female. You easily have Kate Bishop's Hawkeye, America Chavez, Cassie Lang, Kamala Khan, Yelena Belova. Those five, that's a team I'd watch. Especially with who they've got cast as them. But there are other people who are obvious additions. Firstly, Iron Lad. Yeah, we kind of mentioned Riri Williams is an option there, so you don't necessarily need to introduce Iron Lad. What's that? You already kind of have, or are about to. That's right, not Iron Lad. But the character who is Iron Lad in the comics is Nathaniel Richards. Yes. And he later grows up and turns into Kang the Conqueror, the super evil time travel villain, who we're getting introduced in the form of Jonathan Majors in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Why is this not included on the list of people who have already been cast? Because Jonathan Majors is like 31. He's playing Kang. He's playing Nathaniel grown up. And he's a time travel villain, so there's all kinds of weird things up with Kang. And he could be a major villain going forwards. But isn't it a very interesting dynamic to have this young Avenger who he brought the team together? He was the leader in the original comics. And yet, he's destined to grow up to become Kang. It's insane. It's an insane story to have running through a Young Avengers series or films or whatever. And I would like to see Chosen Jacobs play him. Yeah, I really like that. I think he'd be really good at that. And I think he could pull off this younger version of Jonathan Majors, who I imagine is, as Kang, going to play this very, very strict, very serious villain. Very Thanos-y levels, I would imagine. There's no meme jokingness about Kang. He is scary danger times. And Nathaniel Richards knowing, if he does, that this is upon him, this future, got to be very serious for a lot of the show, for sure. Next, now, this is going to take some explaining. Speed. And Wiccan. Wiccan, an original member of the Young Avengers. Speed came in later, but they are twin brothers. Their names are Tommy Shepard and Billy Maximoff. And they've already been introduced as well in the MCU in WandaVision. Yes, they are the twins of Wanda and Vision. And as much as they aren't real, they called out to Wanda at the end of WandaVision. Spoilies, sorry. And as such, it seems likely they're going to be introduced again, brought back. However, the actors who played them are 9 and 11. So while this is more characters who have been cast, again, not cast at the right ages. And if they come back, they will be quickly aged up at some point in the next couple of years. I imagine that's going to happen. Maybe Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So I've got to cast older versions of them. So for Speed, he's Speedy. He's the Speedy boy. This team's really shaping out. They're now getting their own version of Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch as well. Oh, wow. I want to cast Finn Argus as Speed. Finn Argus was great in Clouds. He was great. That was an emotional performance. Man. And he's kind of tall and he's thin. He's got very good charisma about him, which I feel is really necessary for any speedster character. You watch The Flash or the Justice League films with that Flash, or Quicksilver as Aaron Taylor Johnson, or as Evan Peters. They've always got this wit and charm about them, and I saw that in Finn Argus in Clouds, and I've seen him in some other things, and he seems like he's got that, and I think he'd be really funny in that role. I'm really good. There's a lot to do with that, with these roles, all of them. Wow, so it's a lot of stuff going on. But he'd be really good in that role. Next, then Wiccan, Billy. And this is tricky, and this is an interesting thing as well, because as much as nobody really talked about it, we did introduce a character who, while it wasn't mentioned in the show, since he was 9 or 10, he was playing in the show, right, in WandaVision, Wiccan and another character who we'll cast in a minute are gay. And that's something new. That's something we don't see a whole lot of in the MCU so far, and while that's maybe just because a lot of the characters, we just don't know what their sexuality are, it's very interesting to be able to bring this potentially 2 male Young Avengers into this team, because they are both OG members, and do that. And somebody who I think would play all of the aspects of Wiccan very well is Tanner Buchanan, who I've cast a couple of times recently. He's so good in Cobra Kai, and as such, he might be tied up with that for a while longer and not want to jump on. I'm guessing they'd do Young Avengers as a Disney Plus show over filmed, but you never know. But either way, I'd really like to see him do that. I feel like there's a darkness more so to Wiccan than there is to Speed. Speed's kind of memeier. He is to the Quicksilver. And then Scarlet Witch is more serious. But he'd be really good at that. It is a kind of dark, more emo-y look. And I think Tanner Buchanan would look good like that, so yep. Plus, he's another person who, a lot like some of these people that they've cast, the girls that they've cast already in roles that could be Young Avengers, he seems like he's waiting for Cobra Kai to end so he can mega start him up. Next, Hulkling. Yep. No, seriously, they've got literally everything here. They could literally have almost every Avenger a younger version of them. It's crazy. So, Hulkling, or Teddy Altman, is not actually, which is probably good, not actually like his blood taken from Hulk or anything, which is good because they were already doing She-Hulk show, and that's how she gets hulked out. She gets a blood transfusion from Bruce Banner. And Red Hulk, I think, was connected to that as well. Hulkling is a character that's not, which is nice in a way, yeah. He is half Kree, half Skrull. That's a whole origin thing, but they've both been introduced in the MCU, so there's every chance that we could see something in that form work. And I'd like to see Judah Lewis play him. I like casting him. He's very good. He was very good in both the Babysitter films. I didn't really like the second one that much, but he was still good in it. And he's reaching that age now where, again, if he's going to do something big next, soon, it's going to happen. And he's that kind of actor, like somebody, I'd compare him in a way to a young Nicholas Hoult, which you wouldn't immediately jump to, but it's because of the roles he plays. I look at him and I think, yeah, something like that. And Nicholas Hoult, thinking about him as Beast in the X-Men films, it's a kind of similar thing. It's not quite the same, obviously, but it is similar in some ways. So I'd really like to see him do that. Plus, it's him and Wiccan that are the male couple, and I could see that. I could definitely see those two together. Just off the top of my head. Next, the final Young Avenger we have to cast is it takes a little bit of explaining too. Wow, this is going to be a long video probably. It's Kid Loki. Yep, we've got the equivalent of a young Thor as well, kind of, but it's literally young Loki. There was shenanigans, and Loki got turned into a teenager, and then he joined the Young Avengers. It was a whole thing. However, Loki is in the MCU currently dealing with some time travel stuff going on, and this is an option to retain the exact same character, not even a different, a different character playing Black Widow or a different character doing Hawkeye. This is just Loki, same Loki, but you'd get to put him in a younger body by doing something that's already been done in the comics, in the Disney Plus show, as a way for Tom Hiddleston to bow out, but the character to go on. I'd like to see Finn Wolfhard do it. Yes. It's not his Stranger Things role, it's his role in It that got me thinking about that. The jokester kind of, quite savage jokester, quite a mean kind of kid. But he's very good at that. He was very good at that. And I feel like he would work in the dynamic that we're creating here. He would be a real jokester, trickster to the other team members. But he'd kind of begrudgingly get along with them, trapped in this younger body, feeling like he's so much better than them. I feel like Finn Wolfhard would be great at that. Really good at that. Next. And finally, yes, we've cast our team there, and I like the look of it. And they do not need all of the people we've talked about in this video. They will not put all of them in the team. But you get most of them together, and suddenly you've got quite a strong cast and quite an interesting dynamic between all those team members. But they need a villain. And as much as there's different villains who have kind of faced up against them at different times, the one who brought them together is called Mother. Yep. She's kind of the infection thing. She's infecting adults across the planet. It's a thing. Yeah. There's always got to be something wrong with every adult so that kids can come together for some reason, doesn't it? Yeah. Anyway, she's just a dangerous, scary character. And as such, you just got to look to some very competent actress who could play this. It's a unique kind of villainous role, and there were a few people I thought about for it. Some of them have already been in the MCU. One who hasn't is Blake Lively. Ryan Reynolds is, now that Deadpool's kind of coming to the MCU, he's been looking around, I've been hearing in different reports, for a role for his wife, and there's so many that she could do. She's so good. This isn't one that would last overly long, probably, for like a season of the show or a film, as opposed to multiple. But she'd be so good at it. She'd be so good at it. And I'm not quite sure what age you'd want to cast Mother, actually. It might be older, because Blake Lively is still quite young. But she'd be so good at it. She is that kind of dastardly that would work for this, because it's not quite a femme fatale kind of role. It is a more like Hela in Thor Ragnarok. She's just so scary and so in charge and so villainous. Like, you're like, oh, jeez. And I think she'd be great at that. And she'd be really good at... There's a lot of looking down at these kids and thinking they couldn't take her on in any role like this. In anything like this. So that's pretty much what she'd need to do, and she'd be really good at that, I think. And that's all for this one, guys. There was a lot of splaining to do for that one, so yeah, that's a pretty long video. But there's another one coming to guess at how the Young Avengers could come together and what the team would look like in the MCU. I will do that at some point soon, hopefully, so keep an eye out for that, and you should subscribe to keep an eye out for that, and check out another fan cast on Sunday.